Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Transgender cyclist Austin Killips won the women's event of this year's Tour of the Gila. She's biologically male, only took up cycling in 2019 before beginning hormone replacement therapy. After Killips' victory, the Tour's director, Michael Engleman, said the very future of women's sport is now on the line. He's since been subjected, of course, to abuse and threats. But he joins me now to double down on what he said. So, Michael Engleman, thank you very much indeed for joining me. It's a predictable pattern. Something ridiculous like this happens, which clearly erodes the integrity of women's sports and is, in my opinion, grotesquely unfair. Somebody like you, who understands this sport and the danger this represents, says so, and you get immediately shamed, vilified, bullied and hounded, because that's the way this debate is suppressed. First of all, how have you dealt with the backlash that you've received?
Well, I think on the whole, in the end, it was kind of positive. I mean, I think part of it's a confusing subject, right? UCI has rules. We follow those rules. The athletes follow those rules. The rest of the world doesn't understand that. It looks very unfair. And in certain regards, it is. So I think we've been preparing for this issue for a year now, probably. The sport has. Hoping that the IOC and the UCI will step up. And I think this kind of forces the issue. So to answer your question, I mean, I think we just let it wash off our backs.
I mean, there is at the centre of this just a core principle, which is it fair for biological males who then become transgender? This has nothing to do, in my estimation, with supporting transgender rights. I support that completely. But when you see what's happening in cycling, in swimming, in athletics, in almost every sport now, as the volume of transgender athletes increases exponentially, what you're seeing are people who performed very mediocrely at their own sex level. So a biological male, when they compete against biological males, they don't do as well. When they compete as biological males against women, then they are winning. And that cannot be right.
It's certainly not the view for those of us in performance. And obviously, we're looking at this from the elite side, right? So sometimes elite sports is like real life, sometimes it's not. The UCI has set a series, they supposedly looked at research done by the Canadian Centre for Ethics on Sports, reviewed that data and said that they felt that transgender athletes that had transitioned for 2 years it was fair for them to compete. There's tons of contradictions in that study. I think John Pike from the UK has spelled those out pretty well, among many others. Why the UCI is sticking to something that really does not look fair and it does not appear to be fair, we cannot understand. And I'm with you. Everybody's for the rights of trans people. That's not the issue here. The issue here, and I would look at Austin as a performance person, and Austin was third at Tour of the Gila last year. My job as competition directors to work with the UCI, the USC Cycling, our governing body, make sure we stick within the rules. I was sure Austin would win this year. And I think the performance, even though it's a very difficult race, was called mediocre. She raced as fast as she needed to do to win. I would say at some levels, from what I've seen in her performance, she may be one of the best women's cyclists in the U.S. And it's a number of Olympic medalists and world champions have won Tour of the Gila. And the issue here that we have is the physiology of it. If an athlete transitions, are they the same as a woman?
Well, the question I would have, you just said one of the best female athletes in the world. Well, I don't know how you phrase it, because Austin's not a female, right? Austin's a biological male who's transitioned to be a transgender athlete, fine. But how would Austin do against biological males? And Austin would not be one of the best biological male cyclists in America. Very, very far from it. That's where the clear evidence is. It's why things like the Olympics, there is separation of the sexes. Because if you just had open season and sex didn't matter, biological physiology didn't matter, then I know what would happen. Hardly any women would compete in the Olympics ever again who were born with female biological bodies. It's just a fact.
And it is a fact, and that's why we can't understand why the UCI has made this huge reach to make it look like it is okay. I mean, there is some science that hasn't been tested out. I mean, the whole idea of science is you make a prediction and then you do a test to see if it proves, and they have not proven it. that, 23, 24, 14 years of being a male and the testosterone that helps that, stronger bodies, bigger lungs, larger heart. And then you reduce the testosterone that makes you a female. It's a delicate issue. And the whole point is, whether it's athletes or sponsors or teams, and this is why I fear for the sport, it's such an unknown right now. And if the powers that be are not going to take control to try to fix this, then we have a problem.
Well, you're going to end up with someone like Leah Thomas at swimming winning an Olympic gold medal or a world championship. You're going to have someone like Austin Killips doing the same in cycling. That's where this will go. And you're going to have more and more biological males identifying as transgender athletes, because I'm afraid, as we saw with doping, for example, once it was clear that you could win and make a lot of money and have a lot of celebrity attention if you cheated, a lot of people cheated. And I think you're going to see the same. Martina Navratilova warned about this. You're going to see people eventually gaming the system. We see it in prisons at the moment over here with male rapists who identify as women to get into female prisons. I'm not equating the two things, but the principle's the same. You separate the sexes for a reason, be it in sport, or be it in prisons, or be it in safe spaces for women, or any of these things. And I think the moment you start to conflate them, then it can only end badly. That's my just honest belief about this.
And I agree with you. And I think a lot of the sport does as well. And I guess, from Austin's side, she seems very nice. She obviously has goals in her life. And I don't know that means that I get your point. I would look at Austin and say, well, she's playing by the rules, and I'm not defending the rules. She came and she competed, and we followed the rules. But I also think about the biological female that was second.
Well, exactly.
And that's
been
where the UCI needs to stand
ultimately, up. Michael, that's the point, is that a biological female has been robbed of the chance of winning that tournament. And this is going to keep happening more and more and more as it is doing. We saw Leah Thomas win one race against biological females in the pool by 38 seconds, I think it was. Completely ridiculous. I've got to leave it there, Michael. Thank you for speaking out, because I think it needs people in your position to do this. It's a courageous thing to do. The bile that comes your way is disgraceful and entirely predictable. But this has got to be talked through, and there's got to be a fair resolution, and women's rights have to be protected. So I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.